Hello and welcome to the Mysterious Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awijan. Mysterious Adventures is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps, and I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to this show. It is a great pleasure to be back aboard with you once again today, as we have what would be classified as a true mysterious adventure, without a doubt. We're going to venture into, you could call it paranormal, but more of a mystery than anything else, because there's not really paranormal to this particular story, but it is something you would call a ghost ship. The ghost ship Octavius. Yes, the ghost ship Octavius, dating back into the mid-1700s, even before what happened with the Revolutionary War here in the United States. The ghost ship Octavius. The Octavius was a legendary 18th century ghost ship. According to the story, the three-masted schooner was found west of Greenland by the whaler Herald on October 11th, 1775. The problem is the ship left England for a voyage to the Orient in 1761. So what's going on here? Well, the story's supposed background is that the Octavius had left England for the Orient, or China, you could say, is ultimately what they were doing to, try to make some trade, try to get some items to sell on the market in England after their return from the voyage. 1761. They were hoping that it would successfully arrive at its destination the following year, so that would, of course, take a long time. But the captain wanted to take a chance on something because it was unseasonably warm at the time. But you have to note, it was already October. And when you're heading in the northern regions of the ocean, and it's already October, and potentially into November and such, and December, well, the captain apparently had gambled on a return through the treacherous and then little-known Northwest Passage at the time. This was close to Alaska, with the unfortunate result of trapping the vessel in sea ice north of Alaska. Like I said, north of Alaska. Think about it. Yeah, he wanted to take a chance and be somewhat of a hero to find like a quicker passage and be like, yes, we braved it. We did it. We're heroes. Look what we did. But unfortunately, the Octavius had made the Northwest Passage at the wrong time, basically. The ship was never seen again after its encounter with the Herald. So that's the other thing, what took place. The ship actually disappeared after the Herald crew went on board. Very, very sad story, to say the least. In 1775, it was boarded by a five-man party from the whaler. The entire crew of 28 below the deck was dead. So that's what they found, basically, as they went on board the ship, looking to see what's going on. Like, there was no response. They hailed them. They tried to get their attention. There was no response. Then they went on to board the ship to investigate the whole situation. And they were just met with a dead silence. And then they decided to go below deck, and they found the entire crew of 28 people frozen to death. And they were almost perfectly preserved, despite the fact that, they would soon find out that the ship had been out to sea. The last captain's log was in 1762. Frightening. Absolutely frightening. So it had been adrift for that long. So it actually had gotten to Asia, and they were trying to return back from the other direction. So they were trying to get back quicker rather than try to go the long way. They were trying to go a shortcut and see if they could pull it off, but unfortunately, froze to death. The captain's body was still at the table in his cabin. His pen was still in his hand, with the captain's log right in front. Amazing. There were also noted that the mother and like a little boy were frozen solid in a block of ice. Think about that. Frozen solid. The boy was nude, little baby. They were covered with a blanket. There was a sailor with a tinderbox. The boarding party took only the captain's log before leaving the vessel, but they were unwilling to search it because they just wanted to get the heck out of there. Like, this is, like, think about, imagine you're there going on a ship and there's just, there's just a bunch of dead people, frozen to death. The last entry on the log was from the 11th of November, 1762. So they were returning from China. So they had made it to China. The point is, coming back from China, they wanted to make a shortcut going through the Northwest Territory, Northwest Passage, which is even north of the Northwest Territory. And it ended up being plain and simple, a grave mistake. November 11th, 1762. That was the last entry in the captain's log, which meant that the ship had been lost in the Arctic for 13 years. So it was drifting a sea in the Arctic for 13 years, literally like in a freezer. Oh, boy. The log was frozen. It actually slipped away from the binding. Only the first and the last few pages were inside, as it had kind of fallen apart, basically, because it was just, it was brittle. That's basically the best way to put it. It was brittle. Again, unfortunately, taking a chance, and that's kind of what happened at the end of the day. The ship was actually never seen again after the encounter with the Herald, and the question does become, what could have happened to the ship? Apparently, more than likely, it probably broke apart over the course of time, or people made it up, but I truly doubt that at the end of the day. Fascinating that people were able to record where the actual position was. I think that's pretty cool, but people knew what they're doing with the, gauging which part of, like, they must have had a compass or something, but yeah, the ship's last recorded position while the crew was still alive was 75 degrees north and 160 degrees west, about 250 miles, which is 402 kilometers, north of, I just can't pronounce that one, from Alaska, Utqiagvik, Alaska, named as Point Barrow in 1825. So we'll go with Point Barrow. That sounds more like an Eskimo type of a name, which is pretty cool, I suppose. Eskimo sounds kind of like Russian, northern, Canada. Eskimo basically is what that is. The ship was again discovered near Greenland somehow, some way, so in that Northwest Passage. So they were almost back, but they just didn't make it at the end of the day. Similar stories previously appeared, which shared some but not all of the elements of the Octavius story. In a 1909 version, traced by author David Mayer, the ship was named the Gloriana, and there was no mention of the Northwest Passage. The earliest version of the story, so far traced by Mayer, appeared December 13th, 1828. That's quite a while ago, in a Philadelphia-based newspaper named the Ariel. Is that where they got the name Ariel for the Little Mermaid? I don't know. A literary and critical gazette, like the Philadelphia Gazette, I suppose. In that version, too, there was no mention of the Northwest Passage, and the derelict ship remained nameless. Interesting. The period from November 11th, 1762 until August 1775 is given as 17 years. Yep, so that was when they actually first got out to sea and all of that. So 17 years, huh? Interesting, to say the least. Uses in pop culture. The ship and its story is seemingly one of the most inspirations for the setting events. Jacques Tardy's graphic novel, The Arctic Marauder, 1974. So that's another interesting one. But another ship that also was lost at one point not too long before, or actually several years after is what I'm trying to say, is the Mary Celeste. That was discovered in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But that one, they couldn't find the crew at all. So that one's a complete mystery. That might be another episode. We could call it like a ghost ship series. Maybe we'll get into kind of off and on. So this could be like episode 1 of the ghost ship series, but episode 13 of Mysterious Adventures. Also, again, like generally speaking, what are ghost ships? Well, you can kind of say, it kind of goes without saying, but you could say ghost or phantom ships are those found without living crew, such as a ghostly vessel could be entirely fictitious, a product of folklore, mythology, or like the Flying Dutchman. That was obviously folklore. Or they can be genuine occurrences. In this case, more than likely, it is a genuine occurrence. It's unfortunate how people kind of try to take on the story and turn it into fiction. Real ghost ships unmoored and wandering the seas crop up now and then, the crew having vanished or are worse, found deceased. Like in this case, it was found deceased. A nice article on History Defined by Justin Brown talks about this as well, his version and such. So we appreciate that. He talks about the Octavius was an 18th century ghost ship discovered off the coast of Greenland in 1775, initially assumed to be empty upon being sighted, but it wasn't empty. When boarded, spine-shivering sight awaited. Below the deck, they came across the entire crew completely frozen. The captain sat rooted, almost stoically, at the table in front of him with the pen still in hand and his log laid out before him. Can you imagine? So maybe that was like his last log, and then they just officially froze to death. Ooh, boy. So, well, he tried. He tried to come back. He tried to come back a certain way, but it was the wrong time of year, I would have to say. Like, if it was around summertime, maybe go for it. But I don't know. I don't think they had proper heating there, obviously, during that point in time. I mean, we're talking 1762 here. So on Veterans Day every year, you can even remember the Octavius, but of course not related to our U.S. veterans, as we appreciate them oh so very much, to say the least. Yep, like it talks about again, that was 250 miles north of Atlantic's Arctic coast. 250 miles north of Atlantic's Arctic coast. That tells you how far north we're talking here. It's, oops, I mean, that's too far. It's too far. Again, more than likely it drifted further north, possibly, at the end of the day. It had been adrift for 13 years before its discovery. Think about that, 13 years adrift. Yep, as obviously people were already dead, and it was just kind of meandering along aimlessly for hundreds of miles. And the complete picture is even more chilling. So again, yeah, it's incredible. Again, and it's really ironic. Like, how did it wind up on the 11th and the 11th? Isn't that something? How's that for a weird coincidence? November 11th, 1762 was the last entry. It was discovered on October 11th, 1775, by the whaling ship Herald. Yep, so they were whalers. I thought whaling was illegal. Well, it wasn't back then. So the whaling ship Herald, like the Hartford Whalers, right? 1775. That's actually 200 years before the Edmund Fitzgerald sank during the gales of November, unfortunately, in 1775. So about 200 years before that is when the Octavius was discovered by the whaling ship. The Whalers, like the Hartford Whalers, a hockey team that I wish still existed. The Whalers had been working in the frigid waters when they noticed a vessel drifting not far in the distance. Its sails were still flying. Isn't that amazing? They were signaling to the ship, trying to get their attention. No response. Just like, hail them, number one, and then, no response, Captain. So they went to board it. They beamed aboard. Not literally. I'm just, imagining that just to be sarcastic at the end of the day. And, well, unfortunately, they ended up discovering a bunch of dead people on board, unfortunately. They were all kind of cobbled together. And heck, in Star Trek Next Generation episodes, there's episodes where there's they must have got the idea for one of the episodes. There was a starship drifting around for, I think there was one that was drifting from the 1300s. 1300s, like, it was because like the technology in the Star Trek Next Generation, whatever, for that particular race of people was already at, like, say, Star Trek 1's level, like the first generation. It was around that level of technology in the 1300s. And the ship had been drifting in space for 1,000 years in that case, because it was about 2300s is basically what the Star Trek Next Generation is. So they must have gotten the idea from this story to make that episode. It was adrift for 1,000 years in space, and the crew was still fairly well preserved, believe it or not. But I suppose it is what it is. It was an ancient race that it was, like they were talking about how it was basically Robin Hood's time, right about there on Earth. Yet those guys were already, in Star Trek era. Pretty wild, to say the least. So I'm guessing that's where they got the idea. They were hoping to meet the crew, maybe help some people out because the ship was kind of stuck, and unfortunately they already found dead people. So that's just kind of how that is. The captain's quarter, a woman, young boy discovered fully encased in ice. Yeah, fully encased in ice. Can you imagine that? Among them, the captain, like we said, seated at a desk with the pen, the log book. They basically got terrified. They tried to take the log, but it kind of fell apart, unfortunately. It was stuck basically, and they had to try to take what they could. So quite unfortunate. Back on the whaling ship, they managed to piece together the tale of the Octavius from what remained because of the amount of time. The last marked position had been about 250 miles north of what is now known as Point Barrow. It was called Utkavik. I might have it. Utkavik. I apologize. That's a toughie. I mean, say that fast. Okay, yeah, I said it fast 3 times, I guess. Point Barrow. Yeah, it sounds a little easier. I'm sure it's very frickin' north of here, that's for sure. Where I live in the Twin Cities of, Golden Valley, Minnesota, but Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Lifeless, uninhabited. The ghost ship had somehow wandered hundreds of miles through the ice. Alone, it had drifted for 13 years. Yep. So, again, continuing. Yep, might sound like I'm repeating. The crew had left for China in 1761. They unloaded their cargo and planned to return home with new exotic goods to sell in the British market. See, that was kind of the plan. They made a trade with China. They unloaded their cargo to the Chinese and wanted to bring back some exotic goods from China back to England into the British markets. But the captain made a fatal mistake trying to do something. Hey, it's kind of warm. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. It's unseasonably warm. Oops. Yeah. Well, sometimes unseasonably warm temperatures can change very dramatically, as we might know even in Minnesota, much less imagine that far north into the ocean. In the 1700s as well, where maybe they didn't have, the wonderful technology. They didn't have Google Maps, and they didn't have, even if you have Google Maps, but they didn't have, they didn't have FaceTime. Hey, we're stuck here. Come help us. They didn't have FaceTime. They didn't have, they sure as heck didn't have, like, Star Trek level communications. They didn't have much of anything. They didn't even have radio. Just the old-fashioned radio. I can't hear you. They didn't even have that. So, extremely sad. They were trying to seize the unseasonably warm temperatures. The captain said a course, number 1, for the then undiscovered. Think about that. So that's another kind of cool thing. But that's the other risk. It's like you don't even know what's there. But he wanted to give it a shot. Let's go through that Northwest Passage. And, he wanted to be like a superstar. He wanted to be like a Christopher Columbus or well beyond that. Like, wow, look what we did. We sailed the toughest, we sailed the Northwest Passage in November, October-ish, like a year later after they had, first left England, and they did all that because it obviously took several months to get to China and getting several months back, heading north into the Northwest Passage, trying to get back a little quicker and then see if we can go through this way. And, man, he could be a superstar, the most tough guy ever, the captain that went through the Northwest Passage. Unfortunately, that was it. It was eventually being declared lost at sea, and then, it was lost at sea because it just was, and it was found 13 bleeping years later. Unfortunately, forgive my bleeping, but yep, it had never been conquered at the time, and wouldn't be until 1906. 1906 for a good reason, because of how tough it was. So 1906, it finally was conquered. About 40 years later? About 140 years later, approximately, something along those lines. So, pretty sad stuff, to say the least. Upon rounding the northernmost tip of Alaska and entering the narrow frigid straits, the Octavius likely found itself trapped in sea ice, never to escape. Awful, awful. Never to escape alive, that is. The legend of the ghost ship, yep, so people were wondering where it may have wound up at the end of the day. Probably the bottom, but they could never find it. Nobody could ever find it. or God took them. I don't know, but obviously they were already dead anyway, so they were either in heaven or hell, regardless. At the end of the day, like I said, at that point, they were just empty carcasses. At the end of the day, which you hate to use that kind of terminology on a human being, but well, 13 years after they were already dead. I mean, what are you going to say? I mean, it's pretty sad. They were trying to be that. They were trying to be the first to ever do so, and unfortunately, it just wasn't. Some people are wondering if the ghost ship was actually real. If it's up to me, I would step out in faith and say, yes, it was. I think it was. I mean, but we'll see. People are wondering. It's difficult to determine. One of the world's strangest mysteries, the details seem to have been passed down for decades, but a primary source recounting the tale is still sorely lacking. That's unfortunate. Truly unfortunate. They said the captain's log never surfaced. That's frustrating. At the end of the day, though, it's kind of like, what do you really have to gain? Other than, like, it's a cool story, but what do you really have to gain by making something like that up? We found a bunch of people frozen to death on a ship that were stuck at sea for 13 years. Do you really have anything to gain by making something like that up? So that's partially why it's one of those, I think it's believable. Like, it's kind of like you can't make it up in a way. Because it does sound like something somebody might try to do. Like, let's take a gamble. Let's see if we can squeeze through this, treacherous area. Yeah, because it's unseasonably warm, we might be okay. Let's give it a shot. I think we can do it. I mean, what do you guys think? Yeah, let's go. Rock on, Captain Hook. And then, unfortunately, it was what it was. So they're saying if a ship were found with its crew frozen near the rumored exit point of the fabled Northwest Passage, one can imagine how time could warp such a story into a myth of legendary proportion. The thing is, the general part of finding frozen bodies isn't really like a myth to me. So, that's the thing. See, some people might turn it into like, oh, it was a flying ship or something, or there were, like a flying ship. That's a myth. At least I would think so. Right? Unless flying ships like UFOs may be manned by something other than humans. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. I think it's possible, but not like maybe like a ship like that, like something you might make up in a cartoon like Tailspin, where it was like a ghost ship that was floating in the air, that was lost, where the captain was lost in like the 1830s or something. There was a cool episode like that, but unfortunately, again, something like that, that's more of a myth and legend type of thing. Where's the Octavius now? After the Herald crew fled the ghost ship's deck, the Octavius was never seen again. Believing it to be cussed, the whalers abandoned the vessel, watching it drift away at the ocean's mercy. Whether the wind took it or it inevitably sank beneath the waves, its true location, its final resting place, is uncertain. No vessel has ever been found, and it is likely none ever will be. Well, first of all, again, it's a super duper long time ago, but partially, again, I mean, if the water's cold enough, of course, there's possibility of like remains being found. I mean, supposedly people have found chariot wheels in a much warmer climate, dating back to when the Red Sea parted. Yeah, and the Pharaoh's soldiers were drowned in the Red Sea. So that's pretty amazing. But it was mostly like the metal part of the chariots that was found, not the wood. Obviously, that ship is wood. When you talk about the Octavius, again though, super cold waters. There have been shipwrecks that have been found from way the heck back in the day. Some that are even pulled out and recovered. I don't even know how you could do that, but it's happened. Ships that sank that were pulled up and recovered, dating way back into those times, 1700s, 1800s. A beautiful, amazing, giant, sail ships. I mean, it's just gorgeous stuff. Especially if it's kind of like renovated and all that. With what's the word? Refurbished. It's just remarkable when people can pull that off. At the end of the day. But again, obviously, like they say, the ocean. Talk about a mysterious adventure. What's more mysterious than the ocean itself? Think about the size of the ocean and what might truly be down there. You just don't know. I mean, there have been talks about UFOs going into the water, coming out of the water. We don't know what's truly down there. It's a mystery in itself. It's dark, and it's pretty much bigger than anything on Earth. The oceans with the S, are bigger than anything on Earth. They're bigger than land. There's more water than land on planet Earth. So that's why it's a huge mystery of what's truly down there, the depths and all that, and maybe the fact that people don't even want to search for something like that, even though you might be curious, but you're just in the wrong place. And then you go over this way and you're still in the wrong place. And you go over here, you're still in the wrong place. So if it's found, great. Otherwise, we don't know. Obviously, airplanes were also lost in this whole, there was a Bermuda Triangle incident years ago where planes supposedly ran out of fuel and fell into the ocean. And those planes were never found. So it's stuff like that because the ocean's just too doggone big. You don't know the exact location. It's impossible. It's impossible. You can guess, you can theorize, but to find a true, to pinpoint the exact location, how? How can you possibly do it? They're saying, pardon me, there's so much going on. If Octavius and its frozen crew indeed did exist, it would seem they are destined to remain lost to us forever. But in the end, their legend lives on. Yeah, I mean, I agree. References Voyage of the Frozen, The World's Strangest Mysteries, New York Gallery Books, 1987. Cool. And thank you, David Mayer. That's another one. Ghost Ship. Tracking Down the Octavius Legend, David Mayer, February 20th, 2013. February 17th, 2013 as well. It's a link to an article there, if you're curious. I'll put a link in the show notes if I do it correctly here. But Justin Brown, thank you for piecing some of this together. Really appreciate it, like a lot of it anyway. I could also give a reference point to Wikipedia, like I always do, kind of get the years, the dates, and all of that all together in one place, and some other random conversations. Yeah, references here, Voyage of the Dead, 1987. Yep, Ghost Ship, A New Twist in the Octavius Legend. Yep, there's David Mayer, Ghost Ship, yep, same one. So it's about a couple, like a day apart there, by the same person. The Ghost Ship Mission, July 2nd, 2013, retrieved December 2017. Interesting, okay. So it is definitely, if that's not a mysterious adventure, I don't know what is. I mean, like a ghost ship, a for real ghost ship in the 1700s. It is fascinating stuff. And it was discovered right before the Revolution, basically here in the United States. So interesting to say the least. Just the timing, which is a coincidence. It's nothing like, oh my God. So just the timing itself is kind of fascinating. 1762, you can imagine a young George Washington around that time in Virginia, still, maybe becoming like a soldier around that time. So what was he born in? 1737, I believe. So, yeah, we might have a mysterious adventure conversation about George Washington. We might have an episode where it's kind of almost like a simulcast where maybe it goes to both freedom of thought and mysterious adventures, a vision that Mr. President George Washington had with an angel, and he saw images of the future that were absolutely absolutely fascinating. So there's got to be something at some point to talk about with that. But well, this was definitely a mysterious adventure. I hope you enjoyed it. I personally found it fascinating, to say the least. There's obviously not too much to go on. This is not a 2-hour episode that we can really go on and on about detail after detail after detail after detail. Just generally speaking, that was the story of the Octavius. I didn't turn it into a poem or anything too dramatic, but at the same time, a fascinating story as far as I'm concerned. With all that said, there would really appreciate if you would interact with the show one way or another. 2 options of email, paladinolive@yahoo.com or paladinolive@gmail.com. Instagram, mysterious_adventures. That's the Instagram. The threads will be identical because that's how Threads works. It's basically like the same thing, kind of together. Threads is pretty nice for sharing episodes, so I really appreciate that. I gave you bad information here. Mysterious Adventures 79, not underscore. Mysterious Adventures 79. I apologize, and it will be in the show description anyway. But I don't want to give bad information. That's really dumb. So, Mysterious Adventures 79 for both Threads, and that's why you got to always verify, Threads and Instagram. On Facebook, simply look up Mysterious Adventures, and hopefully you'll see the logo, and we'll be You can interact on there. Again, the email, the Gmail, the threads. You can follow that if you could, please. That would be awesome, and interact with me. Also, you're more than welcome to send emails if you have any type of supernatural encounters that you'd like to talk about. And you can talk about with the audience of Mysterious Adventures, which is a growing audience. We're not big or anything, but hopefully someday we can be with your help, with more and more guests joining the show. With Mysterious Adventures to tell us about. Take us on a mysterious adventure. I'm enjoying taking you on mysterious adventures, and I will continue to do so. But if you have an adventure to bring to this show, please do, by all means. PaladinoLive@yahoo.com or PaladinoLive@gmail.com. You can go to either one of those. The Twitter account is, I believe it's, I keep getting it mixed up with others. Yeah, because I think it's still Mysterious Adventure 79. Looking right at it. Yeah, it's My Adventures 79 because Mysterious doesn't fit. My Adventures 79. Again, that will be in the show description. Give it a follow. Interact on there, whichever you prefer, and it'll be great to hear from you. Mysterious Adventures also has a YouTube, which should be Mysterious Adventures 79. We're going to verify that again here on the spot, because I created a YouTube channel for a couple of different podcasts that I do, like Pro Mafia. Yep, so Mysterious Adventures, we look at mounds, and obviously we can get deeper and deeper into some of this other conversation as well. Maybe find something pretty frightening or pretty cool as well. We'll get on there with YouTube. But so far there's mounds, and of course the podcast is connected to the YouTube. It is, again, Mysterious Adventure 79. Mysterious Adventure 79. Please follow or subscribe, to the YouTube channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. So all the podcast episodes are already connected to the YouTube page. So if you happen to come from that, thank you, and please subscribe. If you happen to be listening right now and you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Still kind of a fledgling show here, still kind of growing from basically the ground up here. And I have a video about like a mound in Crystal. That is a mound. I am absolutely certain that's a mound there. And I'm probably going to do some digging around for... I've just kind of started getting an interest in finding what they call points or arrowheads from ancient Native Americans and such. It'd be pretty cool to find some of that stuff. It's remarkable how it's kind of all over the place. So I may do an episode about that at some point in the future. It's a mysterious adventure, like what were things truly like back then. So with all of that said, I want to thank you for listening so much. And at this point, please do give a positive rating on Spotify. Of course, Apple Podcasts, if you could give a 5-star rating, I'd be greatly appreciated. Write a review if you could as well. If not, I understand. But if you could, that'd be really nice to help this show grow. Crush the like button on the YouTube page as well. As they say, crush the like button. If you watch the video, please press like and subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. With all of that said, thank you so much for listening. Please tell your friends, share it, tweet it, whatever the heck you do. But those of you that could share the show, I appreciate it so much. Join me next time on the next adventure.